Welcome everyone to my podcast, Ethical Hacking is and Wholesomeness, and I'm going to start with a disclaimer. So we're not doing anything suspicious. We are sharing knowledge here, and if like we are covering anything like tools or techniques, like I just ask you to use them for like educational and business ethical purposes only. Don't do anything malicious with what we are talking about here. And why am I here? uh, and who I am overall. So I'm an offensive security specialist. I'm certified to cover access, physical auditor and elicitation specialist. I received a Woman of Hope award in 2023, and I was one of the 40 under 40 in cybersecurity in the same year. That was apparently a good year for me. And I have started a podcast, Ethical Hacking is and Wholesomeness. So this one, but also this year another one, Inspiring Ladies of Cyber, where I highlight ladies that are important in the industry. But in this one, like everyone that is important in the industry, important to me, I think are cool people, inspiring. So that's why I'm like inviting them here, and yeah, that's the purpose. And why am I here? Just to share knowledge, to highlight those people that are important in the industry. And most of all, I did it because I was terrified of public speaking. So I forced myself into speaking publicly on conferences and like on the podcast. And now I think I'm better at it, not as anxious as I was on my first episode. So I think it's going well. And that was a good idea. And I wanted to introduce you, everyone, to Phillip Wylie, and he's the penetration tester, instructor, keynote, and international speaker, best-selling author, podcast host of Phillip Wylie Show, and Simply Offensive. And like I wanted to thank you for coming. Welcome on my podcast. And uh, yeah, uh, could you introduce yourself in your own words as well? Maybe
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me to be on your podcast. It's an honor, and thanks for being on my podcast. Which for the folks listening, your episode went out this week, so it was it was cool. We got to meet at DEFCON last year for the first time, so we've been connected for a while. And like you, I really appreciate the community, and it's always great to get to meet people. And I think one of the things you're doing a great value here through your podcast is introducing people to people in the community because you know there's not everyone knows all the same people, and that's one of my goals too, is to introduce them to amazing people like yourself. So my name is Phillip Wylie. I've been working in offensive security for over a decade. January made 22 years that I've been working in cybersecurity. Before that, I spent 6 years working as a system administrator. And for anyone wanting to get into pen testing, there's so many things you can do leading up to be a pen tester that's helpful. So like for me, if I could have jumped right into being a pen tester, all those years of sysadmin work, I would have been lacking and it would have been more difficult. One of the best things I did to be a pen tester was the 6 years I spent as a system administrator. And so I started out in security doing network security. I was doing firewalls and intrusion detection systems, doing some vulnerability scanning, doing some risk assessments. And then, so I started in January 2004. So by 2005, the middle of 2005, about September of 2005, our company got a new CISO, and he had a more modern idea of the way security organizations should be set up. Prior to that, we were all doing the same thing, although we had an IAM team that was setting up user accounts. And then when he come aboard, he put me on the AppSec team. So I was doing vulnerability scans, managing the third-party pen tests, and that's where I learned about pen testing, by managing these third-party pen tests. Whenever the pen testers would come in, I would coordinate getting the credentials for them because it was application pen test, and then afterwards help them with the remediation. I would follow up with the different dev groups and IT groups to get things remediated. So what got me into teaching is in 2018, I went to work at Dallas College teaching pen testing and web app pen testing. And this was really an important experience in my career because that really shifted what I was doing. It was the inspiration for my book, The Pen Tester Blueprint, which started out as a class lecture that I gave each semester. I turned into a conference talk, and I was in the Tribe of Hackers Red Team book. And Wiley Publishing asked me if I had any books that I wanted to write, and so I said, I'd like to write a book based on this lecture and conference talk. So that's where I did that. Wrote the book, and then it really got me more focused on mentoring and helping others and education, and that really got me more topics to speak on, because prior to 2018 I'd given a one conference talk. I wanted to do more conference speaking, but really couldn't think of any topics. But then once I started teaching and I saw that there wasn't much out there on sharing with people how to become a pen tester, so that's why I started doing the pen tester blueprint talk. A lot of my talks were more geared educational towards people wanting to get into pen testing. But as my career evolved, it really turned into more evangelism. I saw the need to teach people on the blue team, management types, IT, about offensive security, because it's a very misunderstood area, and that information is important to others and not always just pen testers. So that's kind of where I got started, where I was at. My podcasting career kind of started out, I was a Bug Crowd ambassador, and they asked me to do a couple webinar series for them, and that helped me get the confidence and get interested in doing a pen test. And doing a podcast. My first podcast was with Alyssa Miller and Chloe Mistagi. It's called the Uncommon Journey podcast. And then my first solo podcast was the Hacker Factory. And then I went on to start the Phillip Wylie Show, and then Simply Offensive.
Yeah, that's nice. And I was like really happy to meet you in person on DEFCON. I was like, yeah, a nice experience. Yeah, amazing. And also I wanted to say that I read the Pentester Blueprint, and it's one of my favorite books on pen testing. So yeah, actually, thank you for writing that, because it was like very helpful for me at the beginning of my career to understand what is pen testing, yeah, and like all that. It's written very well in a easy to understand way. So yeah, just wanted to say that out loud. And my next question, thank you for answering. And my next question is, who is Philip and what brings him joy? Like what makes you happy as a person, not as a pen tester?
Yeah. So one of the things, and this is kind of goes back to cybersecurity, one of the things that makes me happy is helping others. And in 2018, when I started teaching, I started turning my focus more towards mentoring and teaching and helping others. And when I did that, it just opened up so many more opportunities for me. It was just so much of a joy. And one of the things they say, it's better to give than receive. And I really got to truly learn what that meant. And along the way of helping others, I was able to meet a lot of really cool people, such as yourself. I love meeting people, and so I'm constantly getting to meet people. So that's a lot of fun. And what else I like to do outside of work is I'm a former powerlifter. I used to compete in powerlifting. I still work out, but nowadays it's just to stay in shape. One of my favorite things to do is go watch movies. So I usually go each Sunday. My daughter and we go to the movies, we have lunch. And so that's one of my favorite things to do, spending times with friends and family and seeing movies.
Yeah, I like that too, actually. Uh, Okay, thank you. Next question. You've spent 28 plus years in IT and cybersecurity. What was the thing that sparked joy for you and originally pulled you into tech? Was there a defining moment where you knew offensive security is your path?
Yeah, pretty much. I've always kind of followed my passion and interest. So before I even got into IT, I was a CAD drafter. So I went to a trade school and learned AutoCAD. And this was about 1992, into 92 or 93. And I had no exposure to computers. I really know how to use a computer. Whenever I started taking the courses at the college, at the technical school, I had no experience with computers, and I was like probably the worst in my class. I had really no computer skills. And by the time I got out of school and got into the workforce, I was noticing people I worked with, my computer skills was better than theirs. And that's because I really enjoyed the computer aspect of things. Whenever new versions of AutoCAD came out, I was always the first to learn about these new features. Also, Windows 95 ended up coming out shortly after that. And so one of the companies I worked for their on-site IT person couldn't get Windows 95 to print on the Novell network, and I was able to figure out how to get that working. And it was the first time I called a hacker. The IT person was kind of jealous and upset that I was able to figure out, and he wasn't. And so I kind of learned then that I had more of a knack on the technical side of things, more of the computer side. So I taught myself how to build computers, took a Novell network operating system course for the CNE certification, and I got my first job in IT. And as I would go along, just like as I moved from CAD drafting to IT, I got interested in cybersecurity, or back then information security, when I was working as a system administrator. So as a system administrator, I learned how to secure and harden the servers, because when Windows NT came out, it really wasn't locked down by default. You had to lock it down. Everything was unlocked. Once Server 2000 came out, it was locked down by default, and you had to unlock the features and services that you need to unlock ports for the different services and stuff. And so I got interested in that, started going to some different security meetups, joined our local ISSA chapter, started working on the CISSP. Also, the NSA had a cert called the InfoSec Assessment Methodology. I took that training and got that certification. And so once I got into security in 2004, I started learning about pen testing. And then I started taking some hacking classes. Some of the first security classes I took was the Certified Ethical Hacker. And then later on, I took Foundstone's Ultimate Hacking course, because Foundstone are the people that wrote the Hacking Exposed books. And they also did some training. So I took that. And so as I learned about new technologies, it was kind of fun for me. So where a lot of my peers would go home after work and play video games, I was learning new technologies. I taught myself how to do web design. So had a business doing web design for customers. And so just kind of following those technologies and just the things I learned, because the web design, I really didn't use it in my role then, but I've had jobs over the past few years that I've helped out doing web design. So some of the things I've learned, and I've just always, once I got into CAD drafting and then into IT and security, I've always been a big fan of technology, always learning new things. Because when I started out as a system administrator, I was learning Linux before we were actually using it in our environment. And then we started using Linux, so I was able to leverage those skills. So I've always kind of followed my interest, and once something new comes out, learn this. And so it's just kind of, and that's why I recommend to anyone, follow your passion, because sometimes in security, our hours are not short. We work long hours, and it's not easy. But if you love it, then it's like, it's something we do for fun.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, yeah, because like for me, pentesting was a passion, and like I felt like deep love in my heart that, oh yeah, I want to follow that path. And then yeah, I realized that this is actually a difficult job, very hard, like, and you can get burnt out easily. But if I just went there for the money, I would not be happy. But because I went for the passion, I was like, okay, I will figure it out. And I like the continuous learning opportunities also. So you're right. Thank you. My next one is, what early mistakes shape you the most as a security professional? If you can share that.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a mistake, but one of the things that shaped me the most was in my IT career. I'd worked so one of my first jobs, we were doing server upgrades. We were deploying new servers to these different branches of this company. It was a company that they sold services and as well as hardware and software. And we were upgrading their systems from NetWare 312 to NetWare 411, and upgrading from Windows 311 to Windows 95. And so I got a lot of install experience. So we were installing servers over and over again. But then one of my next jobs, I went to work for this company. They were a mortgage company that grew really rapidly. They had acquired a bunch of other mortgage companies, and they really didn't keep up with the servers the way they should have, and using adequate resources like memory and stuff. And there was times during the day we had to reboot the servers. And when I was there, we were on call. There was like 3 or 4 of us on the team, and there were only really 2 of us that had experience. The rest of the team were people that just moved over from the help desk, so they were still learning. So whenever you were on call, we were on call pretty much all the time because we would help the junior people whenever they would get calls from the help desk after hours. And I remember things were constantly breaking, and I was ready to quit the job and go somewhere else. The environment wasn't stable. But then I really thought about it, and I thought, I worked at this other company, and most of the first years or more of my career, I was doing just a bunch of installs. I could build servers, install the operating systems in my sleep. But the thing I was having issues with is I didn't get the troubleshooting piece. So when I worked in this organization, I got a lot of troubleshooting experience. So that was one of the biggest moments in my career. One of the things that helped me the most. I almost made a mistake and left, but just kind of learning. I was fortunately had the foresight to see if I stick around, I'm going to get really good at troubleshooting. And so that experience helped me be a good troubleshooter, which I was able to carry on into my security career. When I started out in security, I was more on the network security side, operation side. So there's times we had to build like authentication servers that help people authenticate from outside of our company for like contractors and third party companies to be able to authenticate internally. So learning how to troubleshoot when installing the software helped me once I moved into security.
Yeah, actually, that made me think that sometimes in life you think, oh, I will not, that job will not be useful in my career. But then years later, you say, oh, I actually can leverage those skills now. And that's, yeah, like I sometimes believe that everything happens for a reason in our lives, kind of, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And sometimes you get in tough situations, and maybe you're at an organization, maybe it's really toxic, you need to move on, or maybe there's no good work-life balance. We're passionate, we love this stuff, but we all need a break sometimes. If you're in a bad situation, sometimes you need to move on. But one of the things I would say is assess what the situation is. If it's something you can learn from, then stick it out and learn those lessons. If things don't get better, you don't have to stick around, but just use it as a learning experience. If I would have quit, moved on somewhere else, I would have missed out on an opportunity.
Yeah, actually, like as I don't know, as they say, if you're not earning, like getting good money, or learning, that like it's not no point of sticking, like kind of like staying in a job that gets you nowhere, kind of. So yeah, I agree with you. Okay, next one. You've tested networks, Wi-Fi applications, and run red team ops. Which one did you personally enjoy the most, and why?
I grew to where I liked the application pen testing more. At first, I kind of wanted to do everything. And one of the things I've learned from recent guests too is, you see people say specializing, that's the right way to really get good. But I really got to where I enjoyed the application pen testing more, is a little bit different. But yeah. But I'd say second to that was the network pen testing, doing the infrastructure pen test.
Thank you. And why? Yeah, why was that your favorite? Like, can you like say something more?
I don't know, because I was more familiar with it because I was from my sysadmin background. So I understood how Active Directory worked. I understood how server shares and stuff and all that worked. And that's one of the reasons I understood it. And one of the things I'd say a lesson for anyone that's wanting to get into pen testing or security in general is you need to learn the technology. So make sure you spend plenty of time learning those technologies, because the better you're going to be at it. I was never a developer, so web app pen testing was a little more of a challenge for me. And you don't necessarily have to be a developer to do that, but just understanding how servers worked and all that, it made it easier for me.
Yeah, I agree. I used to be like a functional. tester. So for me, getting into pen testing with like you, that experience already was like, yeah, that was good because I kind of like had already like basics of what web testing is, but then I had to just put on like the security layer on it. And I have a question in the chat. Uh, what is your experience with zero-day development, R&D?
Really, no, really don't have experience in that area. Although I did find a vulnerability on the iPhone once, but the problem with if you find a bug within an operating system, you can take screenshots and stuff, or you can record your screen. So one time I found something with my iPhone that if I got a pop up, and this is back when the iPhone used before the visual login, where you could just you had the touch, so the thumbprint to log in. I was able to click on the pop-ups and log in without authenticating, but I never could. When I reached out to Apple, they asked me, do you have another phone or a camera that you can record this when it happens? But every time it happened, I was away from the house, so I was never able to capture it. But yeah, I really don't have any experience with day research. I'd really like to learn that. That's something I need to push myself to do, but that's kind of something I'd like to start getting into some research, maybe some bug bounty stuff, just to kind of learn something new. Because sometimes when you're doing pen tests, there's always something to learn, but there's not always the opportunity to learn what you want to learn. Oh, and I got to follow up to your question for a while ago. One of the reasons I liked the infrastructure and network pen testing also was that you could actually get system control. You were able to get
Yeah, yeah.
command line access. You can't always do that with web app pen testing. Although I had an experience once where I was doing a pen test, and through a SQL injection vulnerability, I was able to get command line access to the system. They had XP command shell enabled. I was able to get command line access, dump the password hash, and crack it with John the Ripper. This was back in 2014. Hashcat was out, but it wasn't a tool that I learned how. Maybe I'm not sure if it was out for sure, but it's something I didn't know how to use. So I used John the Ripper. So in 30 seconds, I was able to crack the password hash, and the password was password all lowercase and the number one. And this was from the internet.
That's a strong password, and that's what that's actually what I like or doing like a pen test or on hack the box, for example, when you get domain admin and yeah, you get like the yeah. That I
Yeah,
just
it's really
wanted to
hard to
say,
do anything
yeah, when
application
you
wise,
like
but
finish the box or like you get domain admin, that's like really satisfying, and you get like all that
yeah,
dopamine.
yeah, I agree. It's fun.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Next one. What's one misconception companies have about penetration testing, in your opinion?
One of the misconceptions, I think maybe sometimes the way pen tests are done, and I think this is not really necessarily companies, this is just people in general. And this is one of the things too, that if someone's learning pen testing, I recommend you learn from someone that has experience in pen testing, because a lot of people, when they see pen testing, they really think of full scope pen test or a red team, because they think that social engineering, everything's included. It's not always included. It's kind of on a pen test by pen test basis. So sometimes what you see in the movies, the hacking and stuff, it looks more fun than what it may actually be sometimes. So I think it's just people misunderstanding truly what it is. I think one of the big misconceptions, they think people underestimate the power of pen testing and what a effective pen test is, because you see a lot of cases where companies are doing pen tests based on compliance, and they're just doing whatever to be PCI compliant, and they're missing out a lot of their opportunities. There's a lot of types of testing that they're not doing, like social engineering or physical pen testing, that's important. And sometimes people don't think about, unless you work in offensive security, that physical security is a big part of it. If someone's able to walk into a server room and a system administrator walked away from the server, someone could just walk up. They got domain admin access right there, admin access to that system. And so there's so many elements that need to be tested that people overlook when it comes to pen testing and offensive security.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. That we just like most people just are afraid of the threats that come from the internet side, like ransomware or like yeah, getting their files encrypted and stuff like that. But actually, if you someone gain access into the building, then it's like very easy and like you have access to all of the servers. And yeah, you can do real damage there. Also, like with social engineering, you have like one call to the help desk and you also can get access and all the passwords. Yeah, that's a very good answer. Thank you. uh, okay, next one. How do you balance technical skill with communication when delivering findings to executives?
Yeah, so one of the things there is you when you're doing that, you need to learn how to speak in plain language because you can't use all the technical jargon. And one of the things that's super helpful when you're talking to the executives is to be able to speak in terms of risk. So this is one of the reasons the executive summary is important, that we're explaining at a high level the risks of the pen test, and then you have the technical section where you go into more deep details. But one of the things I'd say too, when you're doing a pen test readout or debrief or closeout call, one of the things you need to really focus on is really trying to not take an adversary approach to them. It's not like I owned you, I got domain admin. You want to set the expectations that you're a partner in this pen test, that you're trying to help them improve. You're not trying to make them look bad. And a good example too is going back to writing the pen test report. It's good to observe things that they're doing well, because this is really, when you look at it, it's a security scorecard. It's a report card that you're giving them, a report card. So you're going to college or whatever elementary schools, K through 12, whatever schools throughout your life, you get good grades and bad grades included. You just don't include the bad stuff. And same thing with doing a pen test. Companies need to understand that when they're doing the right things and what things that they're doing, so that way they can go back to management and say, yeah, we did good on this, but we need help in this area. And just trying to set that level set, form that partnership, and it goes over a lot easier, because if you don't do this and you get in there, you're going to run into these system administrators or network administrators or developers that are going to take it offensively, and they're going to argue with you because some cases they think they did a good job. You're able to get past them and gain access that system, that share, or whatever hack that you did, and they don't believe it. So you have to do a really good job of documenting, showing proof, and then also take that right attitude going in. You don't want anyone to feel stupid or make you feel like you're making them look bad.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like also those system administrators, I think they treat there's like systems that they work on as their like kind of like their child, so they feel proud of their work. And like yeah, as you said, so some young pen testers, and I have to admit that I was one of them, have like this attitude of, oh, I did this and I did this, and they're like a cool exploit that I use, and it was just like very technical jargon, and like I hacked all the things. But actually, the point of the report is, and like thank you for like highlighting that, it's explaining that what you found from the point of view of the client, and like a business friendly language, so they understand that if I had like an SQL injection, what does that mean for them? And not like, okay, I use this exploit and like this and this, like very technical language, but like, why should I care? You know, like I have the money, but like, why should I care that you did this? And like, what does that mean even, you know? So that's like really important. And also, like, I believe that reporting is maybe the most important part of the pen testing job, because that's like where the client has like, you know, like written the results and uh, like pointers how could he prove like guidance. So yeah, thank you, that's a great answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of the day, that's the report is really what they're paying for. And number two, if they don't have the report, the only thing they got evidence of is the logs, the network logs and system logs that you've been performing the pen test. But also to reiterate on the communication piece, one of the best things you could do as a pen tester as a security professional is really work on your communication skills. And this is, even outside the pen test, when you're getting ready to do the pen test and you're coordinating getting credentials and coordinating getting access to certain systems that you need to test, even getting coordinating to get physical access to come on site to do the pen test is good communication. So when you're sending emails or whatever, if you're on their some messaging system, we don't want to communicate like text message. We understand what the acronyms mean, but they don't. We need to use complete sentences, good grammar, punctuation, and then also learning to be a good verbal communicator. One of the best things I did for my career was get into public speaking, because one of the things is being able to speak in public. It was one of the big things that's helped me career wise. So a lot of the jobs I do now have the evangelist part of that because I do public speaking. So that can take you a long ways, being able to communicate properly and kind of overcome any kind of fear of speaking. Then when you get into any situations, and there's cases where once you get that experience speaking, last night I competed in this event that we had in Dallas called Cyber Fight Club, and they would pick a topic and we'd debate against the other person. You had to take opposing views and defend your viewpoint. Now, prior to me becoming a decent public speaker, I wouldn't have been able to pull that off. But because I did a lot of speaking, because of my podcasts and stuff, I was able to do a better job than I would have if I hadn't done it. I wouldn't have agreed to participate if I didn't have the speaking experience.
Yeah, actually, like I thank you for mentioning that because it's important. And I had like advice from people. Like I asked a question to our teacher, how do I get better at social engineering? Like, and he said, oh, you can do you go to like theater kind of like class when you improvise
Oh yeah,
and
improv
improv.
class.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
improv.
that's
Yeah.
really helpful to get you better at like social engineering and also being like braver and like building the courage to go on to like a person and like talk with like a stranger. And so that's helpful. And also a fair point that communication skills are like really important. And like I've like even see that from myself. Before I was like very shy and like I was questioning like my skills and like like am I like good enough? But then I started like being better at public speaking, building my courage, building my confidence with that. And I think it helped me a lot and also at my job and like being behaving in a professional environment in a way. So yeah, I do encourage people. Yeah, that's like a good choice. And the next question is kind of like connected to what you already answered, but what separates a good pen tester from a great one, if in your opinion?
A good pen tester from a great one.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because I don't consider myself a great pen tester, so this is not coming from my experience, but from people that I admire and consider great pen testers, is I would say people that can find like 0 days, people that can write tools. I consider those people great pen testers. And the thing that really comes in handy when you do the security research and you can find 0 days, because someone asked my experience with that earlier, is if you're able to find 0 days, you're able to find things that didn't exist. So people with that skill set are able to test things at a level that someone else that can't find 0 days can.
Thank you. And also, I have a question in the chat, but I'm trying to ask it in a shorter way. So, wait.
One of the questions is really long. I see.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, do you think today's pen testing is more about lurking in stealer logs or breaches and reusing those credentials to access the client's IDP and mark that as a finding? Since today that seems more of a common tactic, even among threat actors, other than exploiting 0 days or edge devices. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it's really one of the things I say just to kind of to start out with is I think it's a lot more difficult these days than it used to be, because back when I started out in 2012 pen testing, one of the big popular and successful exploits was out there was the Microsoft 0867. If you went into a corporation and went to a company and they were vulnerable to that, you were almost guaranteed system access. So nowadays, I think one of the things people are having to rely on more, especially from an external pen test, is, you know, information from breaches. So those breach password lists for like doing password sprays or other password attacks, reusing those passwords. And it's getting internally, it's getting more difficult too, because endpoint protection systems are getting better about blocking stuff. Because actually, I remember back to a episode of Black Hills podcast back from like 2020 or something. I was on a walk during the pandemic. It might have been shortly after, but I used to listen to their podcast when I was out walking, and they were talking about how it's getting more difficult to gain a foothold traditionally on the systems that people were having to attack. You know, attackers were having to gain access from other ways, maybe for some other devices and stuff. So it's getting a lot more difficult. One example is like the ransomware gang, the Acura ransomware gang. There was an instance either last year or the year before that they actually hacked a security camera to gain access to spread their ransomware. They weren't able to get a foothold on these systems, but they were able to get on that camera, do an SMB share, and then infect the systems with the ransomware. So it's getting a lot more difficult to gain access. So doing things like using information from, you know, credentials from password dumps and breaches are something that's pretty common.
Yeah, and I want to answer the question kind of as well. So if you already have like some password list from stereo logs, and I mean it's available to you and it was breached, so why not use it and like check if it's like still those accounts are open and you can get access to it. So I would say if it's available to you, then I would say put it in the test and like yeah, make it a part of it, so to make the client aware as well that oh, this is like has been breached and it's still like the password haven't been changed. I could get access here. So yeah, maybe uh, like a hint, you should do something about it. Yeah. And so and the next one is kind of like a bit maybe connected, but I don't know, not really. What do you think? Are organizations improving at security or just getting better at compliance?
I think some are getting better at security and some maybe just compliance, but kind of the point of reference that I kind of mentioned earlier, the endpoints are getting more secure, so it's harder to gain access. So I think they are getting better, and I think some people are getting better about not just doing compliance only, but some cases there's still some work to be done there. Because I worked for a company once. I was doing a pen test for PCI, and the project manager was trying to get things taken out of scope, and sometimes people within an organization, security is not their interest. They're just wanting to get something done to say that we did it. But yeah, I see some places getting better, but then, like I said, you know, trying to gain footholds in the environment, it's getting a little more difficult. So there are some improvements. The technologies seem to be helping, because back whenever I got into security, pretty much our endpoint detection, our endpoint systems were like antivirus. So you had like the enterprise versions of McAfee, or you know, some of the other antiviruses. They had their enterprise version where you didn't have to actually go to each system to install it. You could install it one place and then centrally monitor the systems for any kind of malware activity.
Thank you. That's a great answer. And another one that I want to ask is you already answered that at the beginning when you were introducing yourself. But if you want to add something to that one, then like go ahead. So my question is, what inspired you to write the Pentester Blueprint? And also another like layer, do you think that writing that book helped you in your career?
Yeah, so one of the things that inspired me to write the book, because it was interesting, because I had been giving that talk at conferences, and it was just kind of amazing that I would run into people, you know, all these conferences I went to speaking, giving that talk over and over again. I'd run into a lot of people that never heard that talk. So when it come to writing the Pentester Blueprint, I knew that this is a good opportunity for people to get that information that otherwise wouldn't have been able to get that information, because maybe they're not going to conferences And some cases, if you're just the average person out there that has never worked in security, or your university is not sharing to go to conference with you, you're not going to know otherwise. So I knew if I was able to put this book out there, then it would give this information to people that would never ever meet me, or maybe never even connect with some of the people in the field where they could get this type of information from. And career wise, yeah, it helped a lot. Whenever you write a book, people kind of see you as a subject matter expert, and it gives you a lot of exposure and credibility. So it's been a huge help. I haven't made a lot of money off the book, but it's really good for my personal brand and my career.
Oh, that's a fair point. I mean, because I heard like voices that from the industry that writing a book it's not worth it because you spend a lot of time on it and then you don't really earn any money from it. But actually, that's a good point that you build your brand and you build like people look at you. Oh, I read his book and it was like amazing. He's a matter expert, and I kind of trust him more than someone that I haven't heard of before. So yeah, I think that is like
The
that
thing
part.
about it, it's not an easy thing either, because a good friend of mine that I've known since my AutoCAD days, we were talking recently, and I was telling him about books. I was saying, books are harder, and it's more of a commitment than what people think. Because when I was telling him, I said, there's more in people in cybersecurity that have the OSCP than have written a book. The OSCP is extremely hard, although I'd say that the writing a book isn't as difficult as like the OSCP, but there's a lot of challenges and it can be difficult. So if it was easy to write a book, everyone would write one. But if you really want to do something good for your career, it definitely helps a lot, because you can get opportunities to do book signings. Because one of the people I like to use an example is Jessica Barker and FC Barker. They're a couple that own a cybersecurity consulting company. They used to be in the UK and they moved to Las Vegas. It's been like 2 or 3 years ago now, I think about 3 years. And they've got a consulting company, and companies will pay them to come speak at their events and do book signings. So they're getting exposure from their books. They're making money off of the book through the publisher, but they're getting paid to speak at these events. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and it just the credibility you gain from writing a book. Not saying everyone, that it's just that sometimes, like I said, when people ask me, what's it like to write a book, I thought, well, if you got a book, people kind of expect you to be an expert because you wrote this book. But it's something people can do. And even one of the things that's kind of held me back from things and not doing more is, if someone wants to write a book, if you've got a little bit of experience and there's still gaps, things that you don't know or understand, you can do research to fill in those gaps. You can talk to other people. So you see a lot of these books that come out, whoever writes this book may not have actually been an AI expert, but through that process of writing that book on AI, they get better at it and stuff. So there's a good learning opportunity there too, and research opportunity.
Yeah, I think that like sometimes when you start something, there is no like there is no perfect moment to do it. But if you just decide, oh, I'm going to do it, and then take the first step, although you don't really know how exactly you're going to pull that off, and then you learn on the process. And yeah, that's like how I kind of like started the podcast because I was pushing that away in time, like 3 years or more, because okay, I'm not ready. I don't have a perfect camera. I don't have a good microphone. I don't have a good background. It's like nothing I do looks like on Twitch or like very professional. But then I decided, okay, I'm going to do it, and like I'm going to prove to myself and others that I can do like create a podcast on like a potato quality camera and like still make it something valuable and something useful to people. So yeah, I think you just have to start, and and then you will figure it out. And the next question, I wanted to follow up the book topic. So if I would be to write a book, what publisher would you like say is the best choice? I don't know, in your opinion. Where should I go like with my book that I wrote to get it published?
Yeah, so I would say Wiley is the publisher I use, and one of the things too is if you're ever interested in writing a book, I can connect you with my publisher.
Oh,
I've
nice.
so far I've connected 5 people that have published books through Wiley, so it's been a pretty good success rate. Most of the people I've uh, referred have gotten their books written, but another good publisher is No Starch. And one of the things I like about No Starch, they're very supportive of our community. You'll see them at DEFCON. They're a frequent sponsor of events and conferences. And the CEO is actively involved in the books. So he works with the authors to put out the best book possible and help them succeed. So they're a really good one. And there's a lot of good technical books that come out of No Starch.
Yeah, thank you. And I think there is a question in the chat. So, what is your opinion on vibe hacking? I mean, I want to add like another layer. What do you think about vibe coding? And is it like creating secure software, but also vibe hacking is in the chat. So maybe.
Yeah, as far as vibe coding, I think it can be a good thing, but you need to, s- do pen test against it, run vulnerability checks, and or if you don't have experience, that have someone that you know that knows how to pen test to test the vibe code because it's opened up a lot of risks because with vibe coding now you take people that have no experience with software development or maybe not even security and they're writing this code, so it makes it a big risk. And one of the things I thought, if these companies really think to do bug bounties, it's probably going to help a lot of bug bounty hunters with the vibe coding. And it's actually interesting. The company I work for, we have a tool called Vibe Check that's able to test code that people have written. I'm not sure if that's in production yet or not, but something interesting. But the vibe hacking, I think, is really interesting. It's interesting to see how people are leveraging AI to do pen testing. And you see a lot of good stuff coming out of Jason Haddock's leveraging AI to pen test, and people are using MCPs to automate the process. I think it's really good because as pen testers, companies don't always give us enough staff to do our time to do our jobs. So more things we can use to scale what we do and speed up what we can do can help. Because one of my favorite quotes is, "You won't be replaced by AI. You'll be replaced by someone that uses AI." So I think the vibe hacking thing is a good thing, but don't give up the fundamentals. If you're just getting started out, make sure you learn the fundamentals and how to do it manually, and then just learn how to use AI to automate what you're doing.
Yeah, and same like I've noticed OCP teaches you to use the tools, but also like not to learn how to do it manually before you use the tools, so you understand what is happening before you just like I don't know, launch Metasploit and hack all the things automatically.
Yeah.
But like actually step by step, like do you understand the process? And I think that's important because if like something goes wrong or like there's like no internet connection or the tool doesn't work, then you can still uh, do some work like manually and explain it in the report.
Yeah. So if you have to depend on all that automation stuff, it can, yeah, like you said, that could be a real issue if you can't connect to the internet. And in some cases, it depends on the type of pen test you're doing. Internal pen test, depending on how their controls are set up and how their filters are on the internet. Some of that stuff may be hard to do. Because I've had
Yeah.
cases where I went into places where I was trying to download like Windows credentials editor, that WCE.exe or whatever, Windows credential editor used to be a good tool. And I was doing a pen test for a company. I was a consultant, and I went in and I tried to download, but their internet was blocking it. So I even connected to my work device, tried to go into the VPN, and they were blocking it. So what I ended up having to do is I went to my mobile phone, and I used to use Evernote for note taking, and so I went to my phone and was able to save it to Evernote and then go in to that my computer and download it from Evernote. So sometimes it can be difficult to get access to the tools and things you need because of the security controls in place.
But then you have to think outside of the box and be creative like
Yes.
you
Yeah.
were. So that's
That's the
good.
hacker mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you for answering. That was perfect. And next question is like kind of like I want to ask two questions as a one question. So like answer however you want. So what's the biggest barrier for newcomers trying to break into pen testing? And if someone wants to become a pen tester in 2026, what should they focus on, in your opinion?
So I'd say one of the biggest barriers is going to getting a job without experience. I think is one of the biggest barriers. But the thing is, if you have IT experience or some type of security experience, it's going to be easier to get in. And one of the things too is if you're trying to get when you're trying to get started, if you have to take an IT job or some other security job, then take it because it's easier to move from one security role to another. Because when I worked at the mortgage company, I was working in IT and they opened up a role in the security team. Uh, I my experience was from hardening servers, but I didn't really have the experience needed. But since I'd worked for the company, they gave me the chance to be promoted. So that's always makes it a better opportunity. And I'd say nowadays in 2026, if you're wanting to be a pen tester, one of the things that's kind of would be a good edge is some of the more modern technologies. Make sure you understand those and learn how to pen test those because one of the things that happens is you take some of the folks have been pen testing for a long time, they can get where they're bored and kind of stagnant in their career and they're really not interested in learning new things. So sometimes maybe they don't know how to pen test AI or maybe they're not, don't understand cloud and only know on-prem. So learning those newer skills and keeping up with it, learning how to leverage AI to automate what you're doing, just kind of keep up with some of the more current trends because a lot of cases, like I said, the people have been doing it for a long time don't always keep up with it. I mean, we see some of these people that have been doing it for a long time that even some of your colleagues at Black Hills that have been doing these things for a long time. Sometimes people see these people keeping up with the latest trends, but that's not always the case. Not everyone is still passionate about their job after a long time. So learning the newer technologies and keeping up with that, I think is one of the best things you can do.
Actually, like I've noticed, like working for Black Hills, that sometimes I feel like maybe the stupidest person in the room because I'm like still learning and I work with people that have like really, really like 20 years or more even of experience sometimes. And but I think that's a good thing because you feel like inspired that oh, those people are so amazing. I want to learn and be like them. And so I think that's how people should look at their career and not like just oh I have OCP, I'm a god and like I can rest now, but kind of like look what you can find that will spark joy for you and like keep you going and like learning and like finding that joy in the work that you do.
Yeah, that's good. That's good that you have people like that to work with because it's like the saying goes, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room because that just goes to mean that, you've learned what you can there and you have to move on to learn elsewhere. But another thing I just like to comment and not correcting you, but just kind of saying for the listeners is just because someone's done something for 20 years doesn't make that impossible to reach that level. If you're willing to put in, there's a lot of things that go into that, just your natural talent, how smart are you, how quickly can you pick up things, because I've seen people with less experience do really good things. I mean, we had one a guy from our local Dallas community that went in got into pen testing. He was like a IT recruiter. He studied for like a year. He got a SOC job, and from the SOC, he moved into pen testing. Within a year or less, he was building a pen test practice for a consulting company. This is only like a few years worth of experience. I knew people with 10, 20 years experience that weren't doing as well as he is. So don't let the years be a barrier to you. Don't let that hold you back. Because I had a student in one of my classes that came in one semester, the first semester or the first week of the semester. He says, I want to be as good as you, but I don't want to take as long to get there. Can I do it? I said, well, it just means you have to spend more time and effort and you can get there quicker. And so that's just one of the things. If you're willing to put in the time and effort, then you can get better. But one of the things I have to caveat that with is be careful not to get burnt out. You need to make sure to have some other interest, put in some time to get away from it so you still like it. Because if you like chocolate cake and you eat chocolate cake every meal all the time, you're going to get tired of chocolate cake. But if you know, have something else different, it's still a treat. So you want to make sure that you take those breaks and get away from it. And I'd say also too is, things that help you too is with your mental health is getting away from the keyboard, getting outside in nature, getting that natural sunlight because that helps your circadian rhythms. You know, your body is the life support for your brain, and so the better you take care of it, the better your brain's going to function.
Yeah, and exercise. So I wanted to also say that, yeah, actually, thank you for explaining what I said. And so I believe that if you like put your mind to it and you build a habit of learning, then you can get somewhere faster than someone that just, for example, if you learn every day or like 3 days a week, you still for like for example 30 minutes a day or an hour, that you are going to get further in your career than someone that does not learn anything new or only does that like I don't know once a month. So so if you create a habit and you have like a steady pace, then the habit will like help you to grow. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's kind of like they say, slow and steady wins the race. And another good example too is to look at the book Atomic Habits, because they
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about just 1% improvement. So 1% improvement over a year, that all adds up. Sometimes we get too caught up on wanting to make fast advancements. So being able to slow and steadily improve is going to do better than if you're just going out working as hard as you can. And I'm not trying to discourage hard work and putting a lot of effort, but just showing that if you just make a little bit, you don't have to commit to something you can't do. Just doing that little bit of effort, just gradually getting better is going to make you a lot better over time.
yeah. I kind of like that made me think of the Formula One service kind of videos when the racing car stops and they change the tire and they like drill and like check all the things. And for example, 10 years that took I don't know how much, but let's say 3 minutes, and today it's like 1 minute 50. So with constant like improvements and like making the process more effective, you can improve and like yeah make it more effective, better process. Okay, thank, thank you. Okay, next one is certification or hands-on labs. What really matters in your opinion, or maybe both?
It could be, I'd say it's a good combination, but one of the things I say, some of the best pen testers I know have no certifications. And so it doesn't mean you're good, but the only thing is when you're starting out, certifications are going to make it easier to get the interview. And one of the things
Yeah.
too is you can have a lot of certifications, but I think, you don't have to, go broke or go into debt with a ton of certifications. So they really, even if you're working on the certifications, your end goal outside of the certification should be learning the skill, because you can go through the OSCP and pass the OSCP. And if you're really not leveraging that well, you're not going to have as good of an outcome. So you just really need to focus more on the learning piece than the certification. Almost when you look at certification, sometimes it can almost be like compliance. You're checking some boxes, and it doesn't always mean that that you're necessarily the best. You can do all those required skills to pass a certain certification, but maybe there's gaps on things you're missing. I think they're important to have, especially at first when you're getting your foot in the door. But if you really understand the technology well and you're able to get the interview and you really know what you're doing, you should be able to get through the interview really well. So once you're in the interview, certifications aren't going to matter much outside of what you learn from those certifications.
Yeah, because you have to explain the, for example, they ask of us top 10, and if you cannot explain that, then what what does the OCP that you have that certification, what does it mean? It's like you cannot explain those things, so probably, or maybe you don't understand it, or you will not be a good reporting reporter. I don't know, report writer. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, what skills outside of hacking, for example, communication, psychology, business, matter most for offensive security specialists, in your opinion?
That's kind of tough to say because writing is going to be huge. The psychological piece, if you're doing, uh, you know, social engineering
Yeah,
and physical pen testing, it's going to really depend on what you're doing. But one of the things I would say too is, just kind of try to be balanced. And if you're really technical and doing really well with the pen test report and you're hacking into all the things and things are going really well, then maybe you need to start working on your soft skills and writing and stuff. Because one of the things that going back to report writing is the better you can explain that report, the easier it's going to make uh, doing the debrief and when you share the report with the customer. If they understand it more, then it's less explanations you have to do. You may have the meeting to discuss the pen test report, and you may have to do a lot of explaining ahead of time because typically we send out the report before the meeting so people can review it first. So the more detail you put into it, the less questions you have to answer. And that goes back to communication. Give people enough information that way they don't have to keep coming back to you to get the information that you may have missed in the report.
yeah, thank you. That's a good answer. Uh, okay, next one. You founded the PWN Scope Project and DEFCON Group 940. Why is community so important in cybersecurity?
Yeah, community. The thing about and the reason I started the Pwn School project, which those I'm no longer running. I started the Pwn School project. I was hosting meetings in Dallas and then also in Denton, my hometown, 2 meetings a month. When the pandemic hit, I went to one virtual meeting per month. When things started back up in 2021, we're back in person. I rebranded as a DEFCON group. I was kind of preparing for whenever I quit running the group, I could hand it off to someone else. And also with DEF CON groups are more widely recognized. So like the first month after rebranding, we had probably twice as many people show up because they were able to find us easier. But one of the reasons I did it was community was important to me because I really got connected with Dallas Hackers Association. It was really a lot of the inspiration behind that. But I wanted something that was more education focused, although meetings like uh, Dallas Hackers is very educational. They have fire talks, which are like 10-minute talks on different subjects. And I had a couple of students from our local community that were going to sign up for my class during the summer, but because of some of the requirements to register and all this, they weren't able to get in the class. So I thought I want to start something where people can learn and it's not going to cost them anything. So there's no barrier to entry because it costing money or any kind of prerequisites that you have to have. Anyone can show up and learn. And so that was kind of the goal of it, that and just connecting people. And it was a way for me to introduce people to people in the overall hacker and cybersecurity community that otherwise would have never found them. So there's a lot of people that had joined Pwn School that end up going to the Dallas Hackers Association meetings and meeting people. So community, although I no longer run groups, I do attend different group meetings. And one of the biggest ways uh, community wise for me is conferences. I really enjoy going to conferences, especially conferences that are outside of my area, outside of my city or my state or even my country, because I get the opportunity to meet people that I otherwise wouldn't have had the chance to meet.
Yeah, I agree. Conferences are amazing for that. Uh, Thank you. And so, next one, what uh, uh, what aspiring security professionals underestimate about mentorship, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, one of the reasons they underestimate is you can learn from the mentor, you can learn from their mistakes. So that's one of the big things there.
Yeah,
There's things that they've been there and they got in, and there's things that they've learned through the job that you're able to learn through that. And one of the things I would say too is my ideal way to mentor or for mentoring is to find several different mentors, not just one mentor, because the thing you may run into is some people are too busy to, if you do the standard type of mentoring, you're meeting once a month, maybe uh once a week and taking that time out. And then when you're structured and you're trying to force these things, in my opinion, the way I mentor, the outcome is not that good. So if you can meet several, you can talk to several different people. So the way I like to do it is I'll have a call with someone, answer their questions, give them advice. They'll go on. If they have any questions, they can message me back and we can have another call if we need to. But what typically happens, they get out there, start learning, they meet other people, and everyone does something different. Everyone does something better. So the more people you talk to, if you can learn all those different tips and tricks from different people, you're going to learn and gain a lot more insights than if you're just depending on one resource.
And so you said that you give advice to people, but I wanted to connect a question from my list. What's one piece of advice you give repeatedly that people ignore?
I don't know if they ignore it, but one of the things I tell people, and I see some people ignore it, is to network, to go to local meetups, go to conferences, because one of the things that they really don't typically teach in the university is to network with people. And if you are networking properly, it's going to be easy to find a job. So for me nowadays, whenever I'm looking for a job, I'll share on LinkedIn, hey, my contract ended, or hey, my job was eliminated, I'm looking for a job. And then people reach out to me and I'm able to get jobs that way and very quickly. And the thing is, especially when you're first starting out and you don't have that experience, you need people that can, give you a reference internally to the company, and help you out there, because just the whole networking thing is the key. The people that are thriving and getting jobs in a difficult job market are the ones that are networking, that are well connected. And when you go to these meetings, one of the things I recommend to people, because when I was teaching at Dallas College, I had a lot of people coming to me with junior pen tester roles. And one of the things I keep in mind is, because each semester I had new students, but I knew people outside of my classroom that had the skill set that would be good for a junior pen testing role. And I'd recommend them. And the reason I did is because I knew these people from the meetups. They shared their education background, what the current projects they're working on, and what they want to learn. So I got a good idea whether they're a good fit or not. So when you go to these meetups and stuff, let people know what you're wanting to learn, the type of job that you're striving for, and that kind of thing. So if people know, they can help you out more. So going to the meetings, one thing, we got there and communicate with people.
Yeah,
That way
actually,
they get to know you.
yeah, actually wanted to share something from my experience. So when I entered cybersecurity, it was kind of like did everything on my own. I didn't have any mentors, so I had to like learn on my own, and I kind of felt like I'm like me against the world in a way. But then I started like requiring connecting with people, like getting like growing my network and like meeting, getting to know more people from the industry. And then I was looking for a job and kind of, I felt like people want to help me and kind of like want me to succeed. And so if you connect with the right people and tell them about your passions, like who you are as a person, like what do you want to do in life, and like what are like your ethical values, I believe that people, other people like in your network, if you share that you're looking for a job, they will carry you there and they will help you, because uh, people are good at heart and just want to see you succeed. At least that's my experience. Or yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because the thing is too is, when you get back to the mentoring thing, because and just even people speaking at different meetings and stuff, because a lot of times some security professionals don't have a lot of time to give to continue to like start their own security group. So everyone wants to help a little bit. And that's one of the things I discovered when I started the Pwn School project. I found all sorts of people willing to contribute. They were people asking, "Hey, can I come speak at your meeting? I'd love to do a workshop." And everyone wants to help. It's just a matter of getting out there, taking advantage of that help. And like you said, once you get to people get to know you, they want to help you, and so it's yeah, I definitely agree with what you said.
Thank you. And so if you feel like you want to give back to the community, so and in your opinion, like how can experienced professionals give back effectively?
So people experience through mentoring, speaking at conferences, sharing information. One of the things that some people are kind of shy and introverted and maybe scared to speak. But until you can overcome that, you can share information. So there may be some tools out there. Because one of the things I did before I started teaching and mentoring is I would have people reach out to me that wanted to be pen testers. I was an OSCP and they wanted to learn some, some good ways to prepare for the exam. Here, what are some good ways to learn pen testing? And I'd share them, just basically sharing resources. So sharing resources with people. If you see jobs coming up, then share with someone in your network that, hey, this job's open. And because usually the thing about it is that's not really, I think, the reason to do it. But one of the things is just when you do these things, you start getting a lot of good things in return. People are helping you find jobs, opportunities are coming along because of helping other people. But just helping others, through mentoring, sharing information, none of this has to be long term, just things that you can do. And if you want to create content, a lot of times people forget that writing blogs, writing articles, that's content. That's one of the original content forms. So if being on video or audio is not your thing, then you can write blog posts. Just documenting your journey can help people a lot. And no matter how early you are in your journey, there's something someone can learn from you, even experienced security professionals. Because I used to learn a lot of stuff from my students in my pen testing class, because one of the things there is I'd been pen testing for quite a while. They're brand new coming in. So they're learning about some learning resources I hadn't seen yet that are not really common in the security community. So there's always good opportunities to learn from others. Don't ever underestimate that someone's been doing something for a short period of time, or you think someone's been in for a long time and they're out of touch. Just don't ever estimate, what we can share and what you can learn from others.
Yeah, like everyone can have a different perspective on the same thing, and even
Mhm.
like that's why, and for example, I have a education or master's degree in economics, so I heard that people from like that don't have computer science studies or like experience with that prior are like also a good like resource kind of because they have a different perspective and like different point of view. Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you about your podcast a little bit. So, as host of the Phillip Wylie Show and Factory podcast, what patterns have you noticed in successful cybersecurity careers?
The interesting thing is not everyone had the typical normal path that you would think. Not everyone went to school for cybersecurity or computer science. A lot of people start out in different areas. And one of the things I see with the successful people is that they like what they do. They're passionate about it. And that's one of the things as far as success. One of the things I've seen is not everyone thinks that you need to code to be a pen tester, and you don't have to. So it's interesting because some people get hung up on thinking I've got to learn Python before I learn to pen test. And that's not the case. So it's just, not everyone's path is the same. And one of the things I like to share from the podcast and some of the inspiration was when I was teaching at the college, I would share stories during my lectures, and my students said, "We really love your stories. Could you bring in some of your friends to share their stories?" And I would, and that's something that always stuck with me when I started doing the podcast, because I have people share their hacker origin stories. And a lot of times that encourages people. Maybe they have a similar path to the guest on the podcast and helps encourage them, to pursue a career in cybersecurity. That and just getting to introduce people to people in the cybersecurity community. I like to connect people with other people that I think that could be helpful for them in their career or good for them to network with.
Yeah, that's very good. Like you're doing God's job, God's work there. Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And so, yeah, as so, what's the most surprising career path you've heard from a guest?
Most surprising. There's been some really interesting ones, because back on the Hacker Factory, I had someone, and this was a good one I like to share because people used to always ask me, I'm 30 years old, I'm 40 years old, I'm 50 years old, am I too old? And that's not the case. I've got a good friend of mine that didn't get into pen testing until he was over 50 years old. So you're never too old or too young, I'd say. And one of the things that one of the stories, one of the podcasts, I had a woman on that I knew from the cybersecurity community, And so she spent 20 years in the beauty industry. She is a esthetician that does these beauty treatments, these really highly skilled beauty treatments. And she decided that she wanted to change careers. So she went to school, got associate's degree in some IT related degree, and then she went on another associate's degree and got a associate's degree in security, and then started a job as a pen tester in her 40s. I mean, this is actually basically retired. 20 years in some cases, like the military, you retire after 20 years. So this is, you've already spent your life in one career and then moved on to another career. And
Yeah.
so that one's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's just seeing these people that come from these non-traditional paths. The stories are all interesting regardless of whether they did a traditional route, traditional technical route, but always hearing these stories of people that totally doing something different. I had someone on the Hacker Factory that was a former LA police officer, worked in law enforcement, and then end up moving over to pen testing and doing a really good job. So it's just really, really interesting because some of these jobs were out after some of these people have been in this certain career for so long. Cybersecurity jobs it have been hard to find for a long period of time because back, you see people have been in cybersecurity for 30 years, but once you start going back 20 or 30 years ago, the jobs were less common. Now it's becoming more common. So some of those people, when they went to college, went to university, that wasn't a career option, and they end up finding that career later on.
Yeah, like for example, like I also did similarly when I was I graduated from the economics. I have a master's degree and I worked for local government for 8 years, where I was working for in the investor office at first and then accounting European Union funds. So kind of like testing projects for co-financing from European Union, and then decided yeah I I don't really I'm not really happy in my life. So but I always wanted to uh, study computer science, but I didn't believe in myself when I was a teenager enough to do it. So I thought, okay, you live once. I don't, and it's kind of like a job that you don't really leave because you can work there till retirement. So it's like people were saying to me that yeah, you're insane. Like, why are you leaving? It's like so stable, such a stable job, and like yeah, why? And then I thought, but if I stay, then I'm not going to be happy, and I don't want to live like that. So I just that's why I'm sharing that to encourage people that there's always a way out, and like to way to change your path if you're not happy with what you're like experiencing in your life. And I do believe that like you live kind of like you live once, and you have to be happy in your life and not like feel like, oh, I'm dying a little bit every day. So yeah, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and just kind of commenting, piggybacking off of what you said there, is really well. We know retirement's basically one of the basic reasons for retirement is people get too old to work and they eventually need to retire, or people work jobs like government jobs that someone does that 20 years, they're ready to retire. I've got friends and former classmates I went to high school with. The one that worked for a company that builds trucks, worked at Peterbilt. He just recently retired. He's a little bit older than me. He's a year or two older, so he's about 61 or 62, and he's retired. I can retire, but I like what I'm doing. And one of the things that if you can wait later in life to retire, you can have more money to have a better retirement. And so it's just kind of interesting, and it gives you something to do, because if you think of the mentality of the typical way things used to be, think back to our parents or grandparents, you worked for a job for so long, you retired, and then what did you do in retirement? A lot of people didn't live long after retirement, and part of that's because they didn't have a purpose. They didn't have that thing to get them up every morning to go do that job. They really lost their purpose. Their kids are grown up and they don't really have anyone depending on them. And the nice thing about finding a career you're passionate about is that you've got purpose, and it just kind of,
Yeah.
you continue to do your job. And nice thing is, when you follow your passions, the thing about cybersecurity is you're not wasting your time somewhere. Say if you're a SOC analyst, that information as SOC analyst is transferable to other roles. So if you worked in IT and you were a programmer and then you wanted to be like a Cisco network person, that's a total retrain. You may have to take a lateral, maybe a pay cut, and retrain to do that role. But with cybersecurity, whatever you learn is transferable to other areas. So if you're a pen tester and you get tired of pen testing, you could go into compliance and you can do auditing. And from doing pen testing, you better understand the controls and can provide better information. Just like if you were in GRC, you decided that you wanted to be a pen tester, then you can take that information there and be a better pen tester because you know what the auditors are looking for, you know what kind of controls they're looking for, and how to better test for those controls. So the nice thing about cybersecurity is that knowledge is transferable across different roles.
Yeah, that's really nice, actually. So, how has interviewing others shaped your own thinking about the industry?
Yeah, it's just really kind of encouraged me to the possibilities, and it's just really kind of inspiring to see what some of these people have done. And it's really interesting to hear some of the different stories because I was just thinking here recently because of the digital fight club I competed in last night. So they gave us music to walk out to. So, like in WWE, when the wrestlers come out, they play music, or the
Mm.
boxers or UFC fighters. So we had walkout music. And so one of my guests, she's a manager of a red team. I met her at Black Hat in 2024. She's a manager of a red team, but she's also in a heavy metal band, and
Oh, that's
she's the
so cool.
vocalist for a heavy metal band. So the music I walked out to was a song from her band. And so I got to meet some of these people. It's just interesting. It really fascinates me to see people that, I've had dual core on my podcast. Int 80, the rapper for dual core, I've
Mhm.
had him on there, and some other people that have these other interests. And it's really fascinating to me and kind of encouraging me when I interview these people is to that we need other interests. And this is a good thing to keep from getting burnt out. We kind of mentioned earlier. So if you have some hobbies, other things you can do, then it's kind of a way to take a break from those things and not get burnt out.
Yeah, actually, that's a fair point, and I'm trying to do that now because I was like very passionate about professional photography, like creating beautiful images with like a bokeh background, like like the blurred one with like the dots. I really like that, and I have like lenses that I specifically picked out to let in a lot of light, so then the background is like blurred like that, and the image in the front is like very sharp. And so I had like this kind of like obsession on photography for a while, and then I discovered pentesting, and that was like my kind of like obsession. And I was like pentesting for like a few years. And like on a hindsight, I think that was kind of like maybe a mistake to get as that obsessed about something, because then I mean, I feel kind of burned out right now. So now I'm trying to get back to like I picked out my camera again and like tried on the lenses, tried to take some pictures of my cat, just like to give it like a test run kind of. And that helped me to like reignite that passion, and like trying to plan I don't know, trips in nature, in the forest, to take pictures actually, and pull myself from the, like I'm sitting in front of my screen practically the whole day because I'm like so dedicated to that, and like writing my blog, and writing stuff on LinkedIn, and like creating editing videos for the podcast. So just like, yeah, that's very important what you just said, that you just have to go outside, touch grass, I don't know, go cycling, go do photography, read a book, journal, I don't know, meet with a friend, and or cook something tasty for yourself. And not only like I did, like, oh, it's only pen testing, hacking all the stuff, so yeah, that's very important.
And that's one of the things too that I've really come to enjoy, like I've shared with some friends and mentioned on my podcast before, is one of the things I'm really glad is one of the reasons I'm glad I do podcast is this gives me something else to discuss. So like content creators like yourself, I'm able to it's always fun to kind of geek out on, yeah, what kind of mic is that, or what kind of camera do you have, and what kind of mixer, and what editing software, just other things to focus on, because I've got some friends that are new to security And that's all they want to do is talk about security. I like to talk about other things too. One time it wasn't that way, but I found other interest. And one of the cool things about when you get these other interests, especially when it, comes to like content creation, is you can leverage those skills at other places. So 20% of my job is content strategy and content creation. 50% is like evangelism and thought leadership. So it's not all purely around pen testing. I'm able to leverage what I know, but then use some of these other skills I've learned from my hobbies.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair actually. And sometimes companies actually notice you in a way that you're like active and like some of your interests, and they want you to come on board because you of that specific thing. That also is that yeah that could happen from my experience as well. So another one is like what advice consistently comes up from your guests?
What advice comes up consistently? Well, the one of the things to keep going back to is networking. Uh, Constant learning is a big one. And some of the people that the highly successful guests are continuing to learn. And I think one of the best examples of continuing to learn is look at Jason Haddix. He's been pen testing and doing bug bounty. Won't more start out pen testing, but he's been doing that for over 20 something years. And a lot of people with his experience level will get bored and move into management. He was a CISO at one time, but he returned back to doing the hands-on stuff. So that's a good example of someone's continue to learn. He's got into using AI to pen test and pen testing AI. So I see people like this that are really inspirational. They're reinventing themselves and they're continuing to learn. And I think that's one of the best examples for people to learn out there. I mean, you don't have to learn everything all at once or learn everything, but along the way, just continue to learn because some of those skills and things you'll learn, just like for instance with like AI pen testing, I've taken a few courses. I'm far from an expert on it. What's interesting is some things that are similar to application security is similar to AI pen testing. So some things you learn from other areas are leveraged can be leveraged as something new. Just like IoT pen testing, IoT devices a lot of times use like a lightweight web server. So there could be some web attacks that you could use against that IoT. If you understand embedded firmware and how to hack that, then that's things that you can use in IoT. So things you learn in other areas are transferable to other types of pen testing, but just can continue to learn. And plus that makes it interesting and you don't get bored because you're doing the same thing. Goes back to eating chocolate cake all the time. If you're doing the same thing all the time, you're going to get burnt out, but you're learning new things that fires a passion and that can even keep you interested in the things that may be more boring that you've been pen testing, and it may make that more interesting as well.
Yeah, like if you learn new skills and outside of your like interest, you can maybe add some cherries to that chocolate cake and make it
Yeah.
like more interesting in that way.
Yeah. Ask whipped cream. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you. Another one. What worries you most about the future of cybersecurity? And also wanted to say that if anyone wants to ask any questions, then go ahead.
I guess currently what's worrying me the most about the future of cybersecurity is I get worried about management and business people thinking you can just totally replace everyone with AI. They need to take a responsible and careful approach when using AI. I think AI should be used to scale what your teams are doing, not to replace your teams. Because one of the things I saw when I worked at the mortgage company is we had some efficiency experts come in and monitor how everyone was doing their job. And they ended up laying a bunch of people off, but then they turned around and had to hire a lot of those people back because there was things they were missing in that process. So I really hate to see, the job market get hurt because of technology. I'd like to see them use it to scale what we're doing, not to reduce people. So that's the biggest thing that scares me. Is security wise, I don't really think it's not as big of a worry to me that we have as much to worry about as some other areas. So you look at someone that works in customer service. There's a lot of things you can automate. You're still going to need a human, but you can do with less humans. So some of the traditional, more less skilled jobs, those are kind of the jobs I'm really most worried about. Those are going to be some of those are going to be some of the ones easier to replace.
I have a question in the chat. Actually, I cannot answer it. Was typing, but I wonder if it's hard to get a job as a pen tester or in security field without previous experience. I cannot answer that. You can use the experience, transferable skills that you had before, for example, as a programmer or as I was a software tester, or maybe you work on a help desk job. So you can use those skills and then maybe learn hands-on like skills as well for hacking, or like do some labs, or maybe create a project like write a blog or something on GitHub, and then you can use it as experience as well and get a job in that way. But like to ask it that question to you, actually.
I've got nothing really to add to that. You answered that really well. And then you kind of mentioned, jobs being transferable. So if you work somewhere, it's easier to get in those roles. And one big tip I want to tell you is the folks out there, just apply for the job. Just apply.
Yeah.
If you don't have every check mark, apply for it. Because back to that student I had in my class that came up to me the first week, said he wanted to be as good as me, but sooner. And I told him he could do it. He came up like the second week and said, do I have to read the textbook if I want to be a good pen tester? And I didn't want to discourage him. And I gave him the best advice I could. I said, if you're not going to read the textbook, you need to spend more time in the labs, spend more time hacking in the labs, and that'll help. And this was someone, he came up later on, and I didn't want to discourage him. And he came up, I forget what it was, a year later or something. He got an internship or a job as a pen tester. And he was like one of the people out of the class I really didn't expect to get the job, because the other students were trying harder. They're reading the textbooks, doing all the assignments, not looking for shortcuts. And one of the things I think as mentors, we have to be careful is not to discourage people. Because if I would have gave him advice, like some people I know would have been completely honest, that might have discouraged this guy, but he went out and applied for the job and got it. So some cases, just applying for the job. When I got my first pen testing role, I was getting laid off from the mortgage company, and I didn't have hacking experience or pen testing experience. And I applied for the job. And one of the things we don't think about sometimes is personality fit. So when I talked to that hiring manager and told him how I taught myself how to do web design and how I learned Linux on my own and all this stuff, he loved that, because his way of education, he wasn't telling people go take these hacking courses, because this was before Hack the Box and some of the resources we had. The OSCP was out there. He wasn't telling us to take these courses. He told us to learn to build something, because when you build something, you understand how security works and how security can be exploited. So a lot of cases, just apply for the job, regardless if you have the skills you think. Another thing that will help out that I want to make sure not to forget either is, as Dorada mentioned earlier, knowing the OWASP top 10. Those are the questions you're going to get asked on every pen test interview. And if you go out and look at Tiberius has a list of questions for application security or web app pen testing jobs. He's got a database of questions. So go out there and go through those questions. Be prepared for your interviews. Go in prepared, because even someone that's been doing this like ourselves, maybe that's certain thing you hadn't done in a while, but you need a refresher, study and prepare for those interviews.
And also, like, wanted to say that sometimes employers look for like a mythical unicorn kind of a person, and that person might not exist even, or they maybe copy paste the job requirements from a different job, and so you should apply for that reason, that maybe they don't really want know what they want, but maybe if they meet you, they will love you and will give you a chance. So do not, because I was before like environments when I heard people say, like women saying things like, "Oh, I found this job opportunity, but they want this certification, those skills, this, and this, and I don't have that. So they will for sure not pick me. I will not send my CV." And I thought, okay, that's not what I would advise, because you should send it anyway, because then you don't. If you don't send it, then 100% they will not pick you, because they don't know you exist. But if you send it, you have 50% of chances of being chosen. So at least go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things too is it's not all luck, but luck does, play a factor in it. And so the more jobs you apply for, the better opportunity you have, and even things that you don't think you're qualified for. So I mean, it's you kind of make your own luck. So if you're avoiding applying for these jobs, you're definitely not going to get it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I'm trying to, starting to run out of the questions, so I will wrap up soon. But I still have some on the list. So, what worries you most about the future of cybersecurity?
Yeah, what I look forward to the most is just kind of seeing what comes out of AI, some of the tools and things that we get. Just one of the things I really look for, one of the things I think is the best thing about AI is removing some of the boring stuff and helping us do our jobs easier because we're just kind of at the beginning of seeing some really good tools. So just kind of looking forward to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of look forward to not being flooded with AI created posts on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure if I'm going to see that anytime soon. Okay, next one. If you were starting over today with zero experience, how would you approach it?
If I started over today, I would not change the sysadmin stuff. I would do that. One of the things if I would do is go back and put better effort in learning how to script and code.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Thank you. Yeah, I don't even want to think what I would do differently. I think my path was like pretty surprising to even to me, and yeah, I was a good path, I think.
Sometimes you don't want to change your path because one of the things with me and one of the things I share with people and whenever I was in IT, I'm sure there were pen test jobs, but it's just very, very rare, hardly any jobs out there. And if I would have had the opportunity to jump straight into pen testing, I would have. And I would have missed a lot of the basics and fundamentals that I needed to be a better pen tester. So for me, I'm just kind of a person that's not super patient. I'm trying to get to whatever I want to do there and not taking the time. And so for me, it really worked out well because I didn't know this was going to happen. So I went through all these other things that helped me give me a better foundation for learning to pen test.
Yeah, but as actually what I learned recently, it's not about the end goal, but about the journey. That's what matters. That you,
Yeah.
what you, the journey, what kind of a person it made you become. Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite hacking tool?
What's my favorite hacking tool? I'd say one of the ones I use the most is probably going to be Nmap. I know that sounds kind of
Oh,
boring, but
no, no.
uh, you know, the one of the things is like the NSE scripts, like the Vuln script is one of my favorite scripts because just so much information that you can get. Metasploit's a good tool too. I use that when I can, but I'd say Nmap is just like the one of the ones I'm constantly using all the time. You can do
Yeah.
so much with it.
Yeah, and it has all the scripts and the flags that you can use. And although it's like basic too, it's like very, yeah, there's like a lot of layers to that tool. It's like you'd be surprised if you like read the documentation for Nmap and oh, I didn't know I could do that with that tool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things when, because in a pen test, you always have to validate your findings. And that's one of the tools I go to first. If I need to see what SSL or TLS certificate based vulnerability, if I'm going to go through and validate that, I go look first to see if there's an NSE script for it.
Uh, so a question in the chat is maybe you can explain that in like a few sentences. In your opinion, uh, what are the responsibilities, more or less, of an ethical hacker pen tester in the company? Is it trying to find vulnerabilities and then fix it?
It's trying to find the vulnerabilities and then giving direction to the teams to remediate it. And one thing's also too, just to kind of give a little clarification, because people hear ethical hacker and pen tester, there really is some difference because ethical hacking is the skill of being able to hack. Pen testing is you're actually performing a test to test all the controls and test the security. Because I've seen cases, it's like I was talking to someone a while back that uh, they had this employee that had never done a pen test, and that's really where it showed me this is the difference between pen testing and ethical hacking. Ethical hacking is the required skill for doing pen testing, but just because you're an ethical hacker, you need to get that pen testing skill. But I'd say trying to find vulnerabilities and then providing remediation information. And one of the things too, when you're writing a pen test report, try to give them as much information as you can to properly remediate it. Sometimes people would just give basic minimal information, but it's very important that you're remediating these vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and provide screenshots and like
Yeah.
arrows and like all that stuff, so it's like very clear what you're looking at on the image as well. Okay, next one. What is the most underrated cybersecurity skill?
What is the most underrated cybersecurity skill? I'm going to say probably communication,
Yeah, I agree.
because people think about all the tools and the skills and stuff, but a lot of cases people overlook the communication part. And this is just even just from basic communications to one of the things that everyone can do something better. So like even for myself, if I was going to improve my communications to like the business and stuff, I would learn more about risk in business. That way I can more go a further step than the executive summary.
Yeah, that's
Because one of the guys I used to work with someone at this company. They had a master's in business administration, and they were really good at that type of stuff. So that's a really good skill to have.
And also, like sometimes I hear people that say that, oh, I became a pen tester because I didn't want to talk to people or just like hack all this stuff. But then you have all those meetings and you have the scoping meetings and then a meeting where you explain the reports to the client and you have to be really good at communicating. Yeah, so thank you. That's a very, I would say that a good skill, important skill to have. What Okay, what one book every security professional should read? I think the one that you wrote is like very important, but what do you think?
That's kind of tough to say. It just all depends on what area of cybersecurity you're in. That what book? There's so many good books out there on pen testing and stuff. But the difficult thing about some of the books is they kind of get outdated. But yeah, I honestly don't have a recommendation.
That's fine. So everyone can have their own books that they like. So, for example, uh, what I'm reading now is about lockpicking, you know. So everyone can have some fun books too. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say recommendation wise, I'd say if you're going to pick a cybersecurity book, find something that's not related to what you're doing. Learn something different. So if you're doing pen testing, maybe find a book on compliance or something. That way you can kind of understand some of the other areas that you're working closely with to understand better what they're doing. So I would say, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. So then, yeah, I agree. One myth about hackers you want to kill forever.
one myth. Yeah, one myth that I don't like, that I would like to, because not all hacking is done for bad. So hacking is a skill, just like a lock picking. There's locksmiths that unlock doors for a living. Doesn't mean they're using it the wrong way. People can use things for bad, but just it's not always something used for bad, because I'll talk to people that don't work in security that I meet, and it's easier to tell them you're an ethical hacker than a penetration tester, because they won't understand what you're talking about. And so many people, I tell them I'm an ethical hacker, and they say, "Is there such a thing?" So I just like to remove the myth that all hackers are not criminals.
Yeah, and before the word hackers was used for people that look outside of the box and tinker with stuff and like yeah, discover new things. So
Yep.
and now it's yeah, it's kind of like
Yeah, it's the media. It's like
yeah,
whenever some
fear
company
mongering.
gets breached and then they started using the term hacker. And it's like a lot of things get used improperly. That's like the term red teaming has been taken away from its original context, because now you've got companies that have red team in their name and they're just doing bug bounties. They're not doing actual red teaming. And then you have some companies that come up with automated tools and they say we do automated red teaming, and it's not really red teaming, it's pen testing. So you get people using the wrong terminology, and then when it catches on, it just kind of sticks, and it's kind of hard to get away from it. And all we can do is, like with hacking or pen testing or so forth, to let pen test. The hacking is not, it's not a crime. It's a skill, and just like anything can be used for bad,
So
but it's not necessarily.
how would you explain what red teaming is, like in few sentences? Because everyone
Yes.
has like a different, yeah. Explain it
Yeah.
somehow.
So true red teaming is adversary emulation. So you're trying to emulate a threat actor. If a threat actor is trying to get in your environment, a threat actor is trying to breach you, they're trying to hack your company, they're not going to sit there and run Metasploit and try to hack everything. They're going to try to go undetected. They're trying to find one way in, and they're more emulating what a threat actor or a nation state would do. So they usually find one way in and maintain persistence and accomplish their goals. And this can take, with a pen test, you've got a week, maybe a couple weeks or so, depending on the scope of the pen test. But with a red team operation, this could be months or even a year that you're trying to emulate what a threat actor would do, and not necessarily. They're
Exactly.
both important because a pen test finds all the exploitable vulnerabilities. Red teaming, you're finding one way in, and you're also testing security controls. You're testing. One of my favorite quotes was from Wirefall, the founder of Dallas Hackers Association. His definition was the red team tests the blue team. So it's a good way to test that things are being detected, things are being blocked. Usually on a red team operation, you're going in unannounced. There's a control group like the CISO, maybe some management types, because you're not gonna tell everyone, because the blue team manager doesn't want to look bad, and he may tell his people, be on the watch out for this. We're having a red team operation, so you're going in undetected. And part of it is, you're testing the people and the response. You're testing your incident response plan. And one of the best outcomes of a red team operation I heard was this company had an incident response team on retainer, meaning anytime they thought they were being breached, this company would come in, investigate, neutralize, and remove the threat. And so they had a red team operation going on. And so the SOC manager calls the CISO and say, it looks like we're being breached. We've got the IR team in investigating. And so this is a good outcome. Even if the red team gets a foothold, you detected it, and then you're working to remove the threat.
Yeah, that's a great explanations because someone I heard someone even like saying that network pentest is a red team. So I was like, okay,
Yeah, it's
if you
just
say so.
I blame that on vendors, the misused terminology. Either people have created products, or they have a certain service and they call it red teaming. And it's interesting too, because there's actually a type of AI pen testing that's actually AI pen testing that they call AI red teaming, and it's really more performing a pen test against AI, but they call it AI red teaming. So the terminology catches on, and but one of the things I say, the best thing to understand about red teaming and pen testing is, if you ever need an actual real red teaming done, you need to understand the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you know the difference, you can ask for what you need.
So you understand what you need actually. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is a tiny bit personal, but so if you don't want to, then you don't have to answer. But can you tell us about the time when you felt like giving up on your goals or dreams, but then something inspired you to keep going? And if yes, what was that?
Yeah, it's actually not really as far as wanting to give up on my goals and dreams, but some of the things, and this is a good lesson in imposter syndrome. But I remember back when I first started teaching at the college, I would give a lecture and do some demos, and I thought, man, that was really lame. I hope it wasn't too bad. And then routinely someone will come up, hey, that was a really great lecture. That was a really cool demo. And sometimes we take for granted what we know and underestimate what we know. And so I've had that case happen to me so many times that it was kind of funny when I was running the the DEFCON 940 group in Denton. I'd been planning to step away for a while, and I had someone come up one time and said, wow, you've really done a lot with this group. It's really grown, and you've done an amazing job. And when things were going so good, it's really hard for me to want to leave it. But then when I did, it was in good hands. But it was just, and I've spoke at conferences, and I thought, man, I hope that wasn't too bad. And just like the students, someone would come up and say, hey, that's a really good presentation. I learned a lot from it. And so it's interesting how the feedback, and I feel like the universe is kind of telling us sometimes, you should be doing this. And there's just kind of little things that were being communicated that we're doing a good job. And so that's,
Yeah, I agree with you actually, because sometimes like I last year I like travel around the Europe and like kind of world, because I was in United States as well, with uh, multiple versions of social engineering for physical pen testing presentation, and I started like telling that story from different angles in the presentations, and kind of like thinking, oh, maybe I could improve, and like maybe it's not so good. But then like one of the like things that like stayed with me was when I shared that presentation on Besides Copenhagen, and everyone was like listening, like they were like not breathing even. I was like so quiet, and it was like they were like sucking in the knowledge, and it was like really like inspired me to like pursue that topic. And because now it's like kind of like my obsession, next one, social engineering. So so kind of like it was a confirmation for me, okay, I'm on the right path. This is like I created the new brand with Women in Red, and this the people are like seeing that as a good thing. And kind of like, yeah, that's what you said just now. It's like, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, I have 5 questions, so bear with me. Still on the list. So, how do you balance your professional life with other duties, interests, and hobbies? Do you have any fun projects or passions outside of cybersecurity?
so yeah, one of the things I like to do is it's just my weekends are a good break because I go to dinner on Saturday and Sunday night with my wife, and then Saturday mornings I've got a real good friend of mine that I knew from my CAD drafting days. We meet, have breakfast, and go to the mall and walk 5 miles, and and then also like on Sundays going to lunch and movies with my daughter, and then just spending time with friends, going to different meetups and stuff, Dallas Hackers Association and conferences and stuff. That's just things that I enjoy. I just really enjoy meeting other people, and so yeah, that's some of the things I enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, you already actually shared that you like to go to movies with your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, what advice would you give yourself if you got back in time 10 years?
I don't know, I guess probably the best advice I would have said at one time, I would have told myself to would have thought to learn to code. That's one of the things I wished I would have done, worked harder on, but I would have if I could go back 10 years, I would have told myself, let's see, was it yeah, I would go back and tell myself, well, actually I had kind of started, but I would just would have told myself to put more emphasis and focus on the public speaking because I gave my first talk in 2015. So I didn't really ever know really how well the public speaking thing was going to turn out. So if I could have went back in time, I would have encouraged myself to put more emphasis and focus on that.
Yeah, that's thank you. I'm also trying to
Yeah.
do that. Okay, what message would you like to convey to our listeners who are just starting in their own careers, especially Lily, those from underrepresented groups?
I would say to be patient with yourself, give yourself grace. This is not an easy field to learn. So be patient with yourself. I mean, sometimes you may feel like you're not learning fast enough, or maybe you're not getting a job or whatever, or getting job is fast enough. Just kind of give yourself patience because it's one of the things I have to do as well. And I've got one of my mentees and friends that reaches out to me periodically because they're trying to learn pen testing and they get frustrated. So you just have to be patient with yourself. You can't force it. So just be patient with yourself. Uh, and yeah, things will just fall in place. Just be patient.
Yeah, because yeah, I believe that your brain can work as hard as it can. You cannot like force it to go faster.
Yeah, you can't force it. Yeah.
Yeah, and also to be patient with yourself, but also I wanted to add that don't compare yourself to others, because that's like really frustrating when you like, oh,
Yes.
that person is like so great at this, and this, and I'm like here, like, oh, how. So yeah, don't compare yourself. You're a different person. You have a different upbringing. Have different like tools available to you. You have different brain and like personality traits, different support from your company, company community and family. So yeah, it's no point on comparing. You're like a unique. There's only one of you in the world, so there's no point comparing yourself.
That that and there's ways that you'll explain stuff that someone else may not, and people get the way you explain it better.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And so your favorite hacker movie, because several people asked about that as well.
My favorite hacker movie, I think probably series was like Mr. Robot. It was a series, but I did like the movie Black Hat because it was kind of more seemed more realistic because the character main character goes in to some place to ask for something printed off a USB stick, and it's got malware on it and stuff. So some of the more realistic ones I like. I mean, I know a lot of people favorites like hackers and war games, but I like some of the stuff that's more realistic. And one of the things that was cool about Mr. Robot was hearing one of the times where he's trying to get into a place and he tells someone he's Dave Kennedy, or either he's there to see Dave Kennedy.
Yeah, I really love that show actually. It was like a show that sparked the oh yeah, I remember now. I wanted to be like this guy, like when I was a teenager. And it was kind of like putting me on the right path, that TV show. Okay, a last question, your favorite food. And after that I wanted to ask you if you could maybe share like a motivational message, like golden thoughts of Philip with everyone, like to close the podcast.
Okay. So favorite food is Mexican food is one of my favorites. And that's, that's not just one specific food, but yeah, it's one of my favorite foods. Second would be probably be Italian food. So, but I love food, so it's it's a bad thing, but but yeah, some of the parting thoughts is one of the things I would just want to say is just be nice to people. Kindness is contagious, just like a bad attitude is contagious. Because you ever notice somewhere if you get upset or someone gets upset, yells at someone, then that person may yell at someone else. But if you're nice to other people, then that's contagious as well. Because you ever notice if you ever go somewhere and you hold the door open for someone, have you ever noticed that sometimes that person may hold the door for someone else? So you just we just there's just so much unkindness in the world that we need more kindness. So just be kind and good to people, and you're just going to find that you're going to, make life a better for everyone. And there's cases that some people just need someone to listen to them and stuff. So we need a kinder world, especially during this time. And things aren't so kind these days, but we need more kindness.
Yeah, and I do believe that although those are like very yeah, dark times sometimes, when you watch the news or things like that, but I do believe love wins. And if you share kindness with the world, then and you share it with your environment, then kind of you can change the world, like starting from your own self and like your environment, and then that will like grow and grow, like because those people will be kind to other people, and that's how we can change the world. So thank you for uh, that smart yeah way. I'm like starting to lose my English speech. But like thank you for like sharing those thoughts with us, and that was an amazing podcast. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and teaching people from your experience. You shared a lot of things, and it was very valuable to me as well. I learned some things as well. So thank you for coming, and I'm going to wave, and thank you for everyone that came to listen to us. I'm going to wave and like change the screen to the outro. So thank you again, and bye.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.